Confidence is the reputation you have with yourself. I think the most important thing in life is having a bias to action. Don't talk about stuff, just go do it.
This episode needs to do the story justice. You built and sold Tiny Co. It's estimated, people say, for 9 figures, over 100 million. You helped build and you sold Native with your brother. You made around 100 startup investments. You own a bunch of real estate. When you look back on your life, which one of those accomplishments does it feel surreal? Does it like fill you with pride?
It's not really one of those accomplishments. It's like, I think the most proud moment of my life professionally was
What is the magic of entrepreneurship for you?
learning and building something that wasn't there before. My brother says this, oh, you started a deodorant brand. What do you know about deodorant? And Moise is like, I know nothing about deodorant today, but in 12 months, I will be one of the world's foremost experts on deodorant in 1 year. To me, that's the magic of entrepreneurship.
So the 5 million's in the pocket, 13 million for the company. You then start going after some pretty big games. Break all of that down.
We've got 150 people, some giant office in San Francisco. We're generating, $2.2 million in net revenue. But then our revenue starts declining and we start losing money every month. So I'm like, okay, we're fucked. So we come up with this strategy. We decide to go after the Family Guy brand.
I think the interesting thing about you and your family as well is obviously you have your brother Moise, who's built Native, and then your sister Ruby as well. And so who does like a lot of the real estate stuff. Mm-hmm. So I was looking at it, I was like, this family is accomplished right here. I'm like, there's no black sheep in the family. There's no one. So talk about the influence of your dad. Like, what do you think you guys all picked up from him? This episode is brought to you by Free Agency. If you want to take your career to the next level, Free Agency is a company that you should check out. They manage and represent talent in the tech industry, and they provide you with a dedicated talent agent to help you find, engage, and win top of market roles that will maximize your earning potential. No more leaving money on the table. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency. Anyway, back to the show.
Yeah, it's funny because when we have family meetings or we're just hanging out as a family, it doesn't feel like a family hanging out. It feels like a board meeting where my father will go to everybody and be like, okay, what are the numbers for your business in the last quarter to everybody? And then, almost makes everyone compete with each other for the most success. So I think there is no way you could be my father's child without being an entrepreneur. Moise went to Harvard Law School and became a lawyer, and law school beats out entrepreneurship out of you and discourages you from taking any risk. So for a couple of years after that, he was like a lawyer and didn't want to be an entrepreneur, but like he couldn't resist taking risk and leaving the law. My first job out of school was at Microsoft. On my first day at Microsoft, you go through the orientation. They've got these amazing executives from Microsoft talking to you. And then you go back to your office. So I had an office and had my name on the door. Somebody had set up a computer for me that already had like a login with my name on it. I had a phone that was my office phone number. So I called my father and said, hey, Dad, this is my office number, beaming with pride. Whenever you want to reach me, contact me on this number during work hours. And he immediately said, oh, forget all this bullshit and all the trappings of like working at Microsoft. You should quit your job immediately and start a company of your own. That's the only way you're going to be happy. And, it's not what you want to hear as a 22-year-old kid from your father on the first day of your job that you've worked so hard to get. So I think he just, made it so deep in our identity that we're entrepreneurs that, I think that's likely... I was talking to this guy recently who started a company called Simple Modern, Mike Beckham. And he said to me, if I'm a better entrepreneur than husband, I've failed. If I'm a better entrepreneur than father, I failed. And, my father, I think, is a good husband and great father. But I think he is probably like, I want to be an entrepreneur first, father and husband second.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we formed our identity also over time. And it's funny because my girlfriend today is done so much work to try to train me out of having that mentality, and get me to a place where I'm like, actually, I want to be a father and husband first, entrepreneur second. So I think that's a little bit of like the journey I'm on today as an adult.
Yeah. You know what's it's interesting because even for me growing up in London, I went to school with like a lot of other minorities and like immigrants. And so the mindset when it comes to careers and professions, it's not really like be an entrepreneur. It's more so like, okay, here are a set of jobs which are like really respected. You can work hard and like get accomplished and achieve success. And so that's like your doctor, that's your lawyer, the engineer. I think probably like coding and software engineer is starting to kind of creep its way in there as well. So it's incredibly rare to hear when a son would call their parents and say like, I got a job at Microsoft, that the response would be like, why are you not doing the entrepreneurial shit? And I'm curious if you've even asked your dad this or spoken to him about this. Why do you think it's so meaningful to him specifically to be an entrepreneur versus like a doctor, lawyer, engineer, all these other things?
Yeah, my mom has that mentality of like, doctor is number one. And her dream is to have a doctor in the family. And so we've all disappointed her. And even to this day, I think if I was to call her and say, Mom, I've decided to go to medical school, her reaction would be like, you're too old to go to medical school. But then second, she would be like, okay, actually, that's a good idea. So I think there is that in my mom. In my father, I don't know where it comes from. Like he never graduated high school. He quit school and worked for his father and really became an entrepreneur at the age of like 16, 17, and has never worked for anyone else a day in his life. So he just doesn't know anything else. And I think in the era and where he lived, you couldn't make it in life by being a doctor or an engineer or these things. You really had to build something of your own. And that's the only way to kind of get to success in Pakistan and Bangladesh and India, where he grew up. So I think that's what he knows and has kind of made so deep in us. When we were in school, my parents were like, we don't understand the U.S. education system at all. We don't know what calculus is or whether you should take it or not. But they were just like, be smart and work hard and go at your education really aggressively. So we did that. Like, I took all the AP classes I could. I took all the hardest classes I could in college, that kind of thing.
I'm curious when you were growing up, because even the way that you described it, it's like being an entrepreneur, it was almost like it chose you. Like it's like part of your identity.
Right.
And so I'm curious, like even take us back to that time, like your early teenage and your teenage years. Your dad was obviously showing up every day as an entrepreneur. Like he was living in that. That was his reality. And you were seeing that. Like what were some of the things you were seeing? Like what were some of the things that you learn about entrepreneurship and business from your father?
Yeah. So when we moved to the United States, my father had a business importing textiles and selling them wholesale in the US. That business kind of fell apart because he was importing textiles from Bangladesh and Pakistan, and they became too expensive compared to China. So he was like, okay, I'm going to find a business in the US and buy and operate that business. So growing up, we never took summer vacations ever, except this one time, which is somebody told him about a Dunkin' Donuts for sale in San Angelo, Texas. We were living in Chicago at the time, Skokie, Illinois. And he's like, okay, we're going to Texas. And, it's too expensive to fly there. So we're all driving to Texas. And my mom was a driver in the family, and she was kind of afraid of the highway. So when she would get on the highway, she would stay in whatever lane she was in. So we stayed in one lane and drove like 3 days until we got to Texas. We looked at there are 3 Dunkin' Donuts for sale. We went and visited each of the 3 in the same small town. And my father was like, this business isn't going to work. There isn't enough people living in San Angelo, Texas. It's too small a city. That it's just not going to get to the revenue. The revenue potential is like kind of being maxed out in the current state. And didn't have any idea on how to grow it. So we drove for 3 days. We looked at that for 2 hours, and then we turned around and drove back for 3 days. And that was our summer vacation. It wasn't like, oh, cool, while we're in Texas, we're going to go visit, this cool historical thing or the lake or go stay in a hotel with a pool. It was like, we're driving back. So he didn't buy the Dunkin' Donuts, but he instead spent 3 years looking for other businesses to buy. And if you're Pakistani or Indian, there's really like 3 businesses that you think about in that era: hotels, gas stations, or Dunkin' Donuts. So he decided to go the gas station route. So he spent 3 years looking for gas stations to buy in Florida, and could never quite pull the trigger because he was always like, there's something wrong with this one. There's something wrong with this one. There's something wrong with this one. And one day he went to an auction where they were auctioning closed gas stations. And so he registered in advance and, bid on a store. He didn't mean to bid, but he bid on a store, and then he was just kind of like, let me try bidding so I know how this works in case I want to buy one of these. And so he bid once, and nobody else bid. He bid early on when they first started it. So he was like, oh, if I bid now, somebody else will outbid me, and I'm going to get the feeling of doing it. So he bid on a closed store that he'd never seen before. He didn't even know where it was. And they said, okay, you're the new owner of this store. And they'd already had $10,000 of his money from signing up, registering. So he had to go and buy the rest of it for $140,000 more. So he bought a closed gas station, kind of like by accident and without intention.
Yeah.
And so we went and drove by that store, and we're like, okay, this is our store. And so we open up the store. It's empty inside and, dilapidated from being closed. And we just learn the gas station business as a family. And, we are like, okay, what do people want to buy here? Oh, they want to buy cigarettes. All right. We went to Sam's Club, which is the wholesaler of cigarettes. And we were like, okay, let's go buy 1 carton of cigarettes and see if we can sell it. And, that's how we started. And Moise and I, starting probably at the age of, I was probably 13 and he was probably 11. One day on every weekend, I would work on a Saturday and he would work on a Sunday. And we'd work for 12 hours at the store. And that's what our first work experience was like.
I was just thinking, and I even actually jotted it down in my notes. I said that the age of information, because I think we live in a beautiful time. We live in a great time where information is everywhere, right? If I want to start an agency, I can go out onto YouTube And literally there'll probably be like a 3-hour tutorial of someone who's done it, who's going to tell you step by step, every step of the way, what you need to do, what you need to be focusing, what your KPI should be.
Totally. Yes.
And information is everywhere. And I think it's a beautiful thing in a lot of ways. However, I think there's a beauty in the story that you just described and explained, which is like just figuring something out by doing, not studying, not theorizing, actually going out and doing it. And it's funny, like, even it's like, I don't know how to bid. I'm just gonna go and bid.
Try it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, it's like, oh, and even what you were talking about, like, we learned how to build the business of a gas station by just doing it as a family of like, oh, people are buying this. People, like, everything was just by doing. There's a beauty to that. And I think that's something that is like, that's core to being an entrepreneur. It's like, you can just figure something out. And I think, and even I have to hold myself honest with this a lot, which is there's a lot of impatience in this age. It's like, I want the answer right now so I can go and execute it right now so that I can go and get the success right now. Whereas it sounds like from what your dad was doing, like, it didn't feel like there was impatience.
Yeah. He was very patient.
Yeah.
In fact, I think my mother was like, look, we got to get started. It's been 3 years. Just pick one and buy it and let's go. So yeah, I think you're right about that. And, having lived it, I don't romanticize the like trial and error that it was and the lack of information. But it's one of those things where Peter Thiel says that people ask him, why is the PayPal mafia so successful? And he says it's because people learn the right thing, which is by working really hard and being really focused, you can win. And he says that at places like Google, you learn that you're going to win without working that hard. So when people leave Google to go start a company, they're not used to the pain and agony and level of effort that it requires. So they learn the wrong lesson from that Google experience. So I think you're right that, like, from our father, we all learned that, just by brute force and trying and not giving up and doing it day after day for 12 hours a day, you can be successful. And it's funny because I see a bunch of friends of mine who are like, who are entrepreneurs, but not willing to put in the same level of effort. And for me and Moise and our sister Ruby, it's just like comes so naturally to be like, yeah, we can put in insane amounts of effort and grind this out. So in a sense, we learned the right lesson from our father of like, just by go be an entrepreneur and like you will always succeed by never giving up. And I've started a bunch of different businesses and none of them have failed because I never gave up. I would just change what the business was until I landed on something that worked.
Yeah.
The other weird thing that we learned from the gas station business actually is how many there were like 3 or 4 different eras where you made money from like this one specific thing. And you had to identify that, oh, we're entering a new era and go super hard in whatever that new opportunity was. So for example, at some point in time, you were making a lot of money from selling gas. And then that went away. So then it became, what can we sell from inside the store? And then from inside the store, we could sell phone cards because people were calling internationally and needed to buy phone cards to do it. So we'd make a ton of money from phone cards. Then it was check cashing. Then it was, there's all of these gray market cigarettes. Philip Morris will make Marlboro cigarettes that they're exporting to the rest of the world. But somebody has found a loophole where instead of exporting them, you just import them back into the US. And you get them at a discounted price, but it's the exact same cigarette as is sold in America to Americans. And so you buy those and sell those at a discount to the price that everyone else is selling them at. And so from each of those things, we would go and make, $200,000 over a year from that one thing. And that was also a really important lesson that we learned, which is keep your fucking eyes and ears open at all times for the other thing that you can go that's like seems ancillary, but could become the core part of your business. So it was a lot of fun. It's so funny because, I resented the whole time I was doing it, having to work at a gas station at the age of from 13 to 18, where I was like, I'm better than this. I can do more in the world than this. I don't like this. It's a ton of hours. But at the same time, there, like on Fridays, 30 people would come to the store at the exact same time. And so we had 2 registers, and I'd be able to check people out on both registers and be able to like deal with those 30 customers faster than, anybody else could. And I would memorize what everyone wanted and be able to get that for them before they even got up to the counter. So there was such a, it was such a ambivalent period of like pride around the mastery and the level of success that we had, to like resentment of the work. Kind of funny.
I like that. The pride around the mastery.
Yeah, it's so funny because when my brother turned 16, my parents had made enough money that they were like, cool, let's buy a new car. And so my father gave Moise and I a blank check that he signed. And we went to all of the Honda dealers in the neighborhood, like 5 Honda dealers in the like 100-mile area. And we said, we've come with a blank check from our father. We were looking to buy a car today, but we want a good deal. And so we negotiated for the car from across these 5 dealerships. We tried to conduct like a reverse auction and, bought Moise his first car at 16. And it was a brand new, like $25,000 Honda Accord with leather interior, coupe, all the bells and whistles. And, such a moment of pride to do that. And another example where our father was just like, cool, go out and be independent and like figure this out on your own.
I wonder, it's interesting even like the energy that you speak with, right? What is, I know we spoke about it in terms of your dad, like what was so meaningful about him. And even when I was reading your notes, I remember you said something, you said, my mindset to wealth is I focus on 2 things, freedom and safety. And I wonder that skill of entrepreneurship, which is really just being able to figure things out, it's almost like you're like a professional problem solver. Is that because of the freedom aspect to it? It's the fact that I can go into this arena, I can go into buy a car, and I can use the skills that I've taken from the gas station and apply it into this arena. And all of a sudden, all of these worlds are open to me because I have the confidence that I can figure it out. What would you say? What is the magic of entrepreneurship for you?
The magic of entrepreneurship is like learning and building something that wasn't there before. My brother says this. He actually stole this as a quote from me, but he says, he says the story of like my cousin asked me, oh, you started a deodorant brand. What do you know about deodorant? And Moise is like, I know nothing about deodorant today, but in 12 months, I will be one of the world's most foremost experts on deodorant in 1 year. To me, that's the magic of entrepreneurship, which is, you have no fucking clue what you're doing, but you're willing to learn and do the work to figure it out. And you become an expert in that specific field over time and can dominate and contribute to that field through that learning and expertise.
Yeah. You know what's, and I'm experiencing it now as I'm trying to build my business. There's 2 aspects to it, I think. You're actually really, the learning curve is actually 2 things. I think a lot of the time people focus on skills and like knowledge, like being able to actually do the work or like know what to do.
A lot of the times, I think it's important, but a lot of the times I actually think is what's holding people back isn't that. It's the belief.
Yeah.
It's the belief that I could make $1 million in a year, or even not even that. I could make that's like the number at the moment, $10,000 a month.
Yep.
The belief that I could just make $10,000. And so I'm curious for you, because obviously, even with the Microsoft stuff, like you left after a few years to start your own company. When you were starting out, given what you'd experienced with your dad and building the gas station, was that belief of I can succeed being an entrepreneur, was it already there, or was it something that you had to build? And it was like, oh, okay, maybe after you made like 100,000 in revenue, it was like, oh, okay, I can kind of do this thing. Like, what were those turning points?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the way I think about it, and I actually think about this today, is I believed I could do it. I knew that I would succeed over a long enough time period. I didn't know if the specific thing that I was working on was going to work, but I knew that I was destined for greatness, is the way I always felt. So, it's actually the way I feel about myself today, which is, it's funny because some people look at me and think that I'm successful, and I don't look at myself and think that I'm successful oftentimes. I just look up at all of the stuff that I could be doing. And so I think I just have this like irrational belief that whenever I do something, it will work. And I don't know where that comes from. Probably just my mother telling me over and over as a kid, you can do this. Yeah, she would tell us stories about how, let's say, the president of the United States was to walk in. This is how you should stand. You should stand with pride and, not be shy and not whisper, but, speak with a full-throated voice, and be confident in all of those situations. So she just like said that to us over and over and over again when we were kids, and it made us believe it.
Do you think someone can, and you actually, you even said it at the beginning, and you said it in the notes, which is like the support of your family. One of the biggest advantages that you have is the support of your family. And I think it's so interesting when it comes to like that belief factor. It's like the belief for me is kind of built in, because the people that I first knew in my earliest moments, who are my parents, and for everyone it's their parents, they believed, so it's built in that I would believe. I'm curious though, because there'll be a lot of people listening, they didn't have that experience. And so is there a way that you can create that belief system? Can you brainwash yourself? Can you do something so that you can build that like unbreakable, bulletproof belief that's then going to spur you on into all these ventures?
Yeah. So Naval has this quote, confidence is the reputation you have with yourself. So I think it's, I think when I started, I started a small business, and I was like, cool, I can make this successful. And then I did. And that gave me the confidence to be able to try something riskier, bigger, harder. So I think it's the sort of thing where you build that confidence in yourself and that faith in yourself by doing small things and being good at them. And then you're like, cool, I can do the next bigger thing and bigger thing. And as you have that like pattern of success, you build that conviction and confidence in yourself to do the next big thing. And you can start incredibly small, and you can start with a friend of mine is like trying to learn how to code, and so he's like, I'm going to learn how to code, and then I'm going to make this website, and he did it, and it gives him a lot of confidence. And I think if you just keep doing that, I think the most important thing in life is having a bias to action. Which is, don't talk about stuff, just go do it. You think this might work? Go try it out and find a way to do it. And I think that I think that's something that you can learn. I think confidence is something that you can learn, and having a bias to action is something that you can learn. So I think those two things go hand in hand. If you have a bias to action, no matter what, you will succeed over time, and that success will give you more confidence. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time, like 15 years now or 16 years. People that I met early on that I thought were complete morons and were going nowhere, over a 10-year time period, everyone I know who's been an entrepreneur for 10 years has succeeded. So it's almost inevitable that you will succeed if you stick with it for 10 years. And who knows what that journey will look like for each individual, but literally don't stop for 10 years and you will be rich.
Yeah. It's interesting for me because I'm 25. And
which is amazing. Yeah. Being 25 is the greatest thing ever. Yeah. Like if, Jeff Bezos could switch places with you, he would. If I could 100%. Switch places with you, I would.
Yeah, 100%. But it's interesting what you say about time, because I actually think, people's outcomes would change. And it's even something that I'm trying to do in my own brain. It's difficult because I'm not that patient. But I think if you can adjust your relationship with how you think about time, it would change. Because even when we talk about the confidence thing, right? And let's use the example of basketball. If I show up to the court and I show up day one and every shot I'm hitting is bricking, it's clanging off, it's an air ball, I think a lot of people, especially when you're early, mid-20s and you feel like you have something to prove and you want everything now, you're only thinking about day one.
Yes.
You're not thinking, if I show up to the court for 100 days, what does that do? If I show up to the court for 365 days, every day, 20 minutes a day, how good would I be? And you don't think about, and even when you're talking, right, you're talking about time horizons. Like the game that you're playing is fundamentally different, because you're not saying, it's different if you have to be confident that you can start a really successful company and build it in 6 months. That's different than like, oh yeah, I'm just going to keep at it. And like, if I keep at it, like I have the highest confidence that over an extended period of time, it will just work out.
Kobe Bryant said this when he entered the NBA. He was like, looked around and I was like, I'm 18 and everyone like does 3 hours of practice. I'm going to put in 6 hours of practice, and it's inevitable that with time I will be the best in the NBA because I will out practice everyone and I'm younger than everyone else. So just by brute force work and time, he was like, I will be able to win. And I think you're absolutely right that like the greatest mistake I've made as an entrepreneur is not having a long-term perspective and a long-term time horizon. And I think it's probably one of the most common mistakes that entrepreneurs make is starting a company with the goal of being like, cool, in 3 years, I'm going to sell it. Or in 3 years, it's going to be doing this. If you think in a decade time frame, you're going to make very different decisions than if you're thinking about, I need success in 3 months. I need success in 6 months. And you're likely to make much better decisions when you're thinking in a 10-year time frame. And it's one of those like difficulties of being 25 where you're like, I want it now. I don't want to wait till I'm 30. 30 seems like fucking forever. I want it now. And so that impatience, that sense of urgency leads you to having a bias to action, which is fucking powerful and exciting and amazing. But if there's a way to combine that with a long-term perspective and a long time horizon, making better decisions.
Yeah. You know what it is? And I think even when you're hitting the table, I think that feeling when you're at that age, and maybe it's different for other people, but I remember, I said this to my dad. I said, this business, because I do think on a pretty long time horizon, like I know kind of the area I want to be in, but I think the business at this point, it feels like personal to me. Like it feels, and I'm curious actually when you did your first company, if it felt like this for you as well. I want to prove it to myself that I can do it. So it doesn't just feel like, oh yeah, we'll give it like this amount of time. It feels like every result that happens, every setback, it's like almost a challenge to that belief.
Yeah, of course. Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that's super universal. You want to prove it to yourself because you know you can do it in your heart, but does it work out in the real world? And you want to prove to yourself that you can do it. Even more, my brother has like a list of people in his head who have like wronged him and said no. Like there's some investor,
Michael Jordan-esque right there.
Yeah, it is very Michael Jordan-esque. I think it's the wrong perspective, but I think it makes a good story. And so, he keeps a list of these people, and he's like, I'm going to prove this person wrong by doing X. For me, I've always been a lot more like, I want to prove it to myself and like intrinsically motivated. But yeah, it is one of the greatest joys of life is thinking you can do something and then doing that fucking thing. One of the best feelings ever.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because once you do it, you immediately look for the next thing that you can't do. And so that moment of joy and success is so fleeting. Because today, when I look at businesses I want to start, I'm like, oh, this would be easy. I've already succeeded at this level. Let's go up here. Like the air is thinner here. Gravity is stronger. Physics are different. It's harder to hire people. It's harder to build a company of this scale. That's what my next challenge is and how I think about it.
Yeah. See, I think anyone that achieves something great has that mindset of like they want to keep pushing it. Even we were talking about LeBron earlier, right? People are like, he's 38. By most people's reckoning, the worst he is the second greatest player or like Mount Rushmore player in basketball.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, why is he still, he's like going to be a billionaire. Like, why is he still doing this thing? And like, why is he still talking on Twitter about like washed king and like how he can't win a ring? Like, why does he feel this angst to keep? And it's, I guess it's the fact that it hasn't been done before. I guess the thing that I think about when it comes to that, because I think I'm very much wired that way, which is like things that we're doing on the podcast now are things that I would have dreamt of a year ago.
Right.
But the only thing I can think about
what's next
is like, is what's next.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
And there's an impatience to it and there's like a dissatisfaction to it. And the thing that I think to myself is like, will there be a point where I'm like, oh, okay, like this is it? And if there isn't going to be a point where I'm like, this is it, then isn't there something sad about that? Isn't there something, it's just not right about like the fact that you're going to put in all of this work, challenge yourself in all of these ways. And at the end of that, there's never going to be a moment of satisfaction of sitting down and being like, oh, okay, I did this thing and not feeling like, and not having, even if you do have that thought, not the next moment, you're not thinking, okay, what's the next thing that takes this 10x from where it is now? Yeah. You think about that?
Yeah, I'm terrible at this. I think you should get good at this. You're 25, you can get really good at this, which is like find ways to appreciate every checkpoint along the way. Like write in a journal that's like your, I don't know what the right word is, but like you got to the top of this hill, you write in a journal about it. You get to the top of the next hill, write in a journal about it. And like go read the previous entries every time you write in that journal. I think that will make you a lot happier and a lot like, one of the weird things about, being older is you look back and you're like, oh, that moment was actually awesome, but I was rushing to the next thing. So I never stopped to look at it and appreciate it. So I think keeping a journal of like this highlight reel is probably the best way to train yourself emotionally to enjoy those moments. In fact, I'm going to do this exact thing that I just said that you should do. I'm going to go buy a journal and call it my highlight reel and just write in it every time something epic happens professionally.
Yeah. You know, actually, I do because I prefer to speak than to write. I just think that's how I communicate better. So I actually have memos in my phone every week of me like reflecting on like what's been achieved. And it like goes back years. Sometimes I'll actually listen to it. And it's like I can...
It's gold. It's so good.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting as well? I even think about it. It's even interesting in like a content space because when I don't know if you watch like the sports documentaries or just documentaries in general. Like I would even watch the one, the Kanye West, like the Genius documentary. And like the most interesting parts of that documentary are not when he was the global megastar and like all the like the Grammys and like all of these performances and features and albums with Jay-Z.
It's how did you do it? Who were you when you started?
It was like when he had the braces in and his jaw was a bit messed up and he's like going into the Rockefeller offices and no one cares about him.
Yeah.
Like those early moments are they're
the best.
Interesting.
And you forget how difficult it was if you don't like record it in some way. You just forget those like micro moments, or I didn't even want to use the word micro, but those moments of difficulty all along the way, you forget about them.
Yeah. You know what, let's talk about, I want to talk about Tiny. Because obviously, and I'll give some of the context to the audience. At this point, you'd already built and sold a company for over $1 million. And this was kind of like, I guess your second foray, like your second venture after that. Before we even get to Tiny, I think there's so many people that, and I guess I fall into this category. I would love to be the 26-year-old, 27-year-old millionaire, successful company. That's like the world is at your feet. Like what was your emotion back then? Like what was even your feeling at that time?
Yeah, so I left Microsoft. I quit because I wanted to do a startup, and all these people that I worked with were like, "You want to do a startup? You're going to be back here in 6 months." And I was like, "Fuck you! I will die outside, but I will not be coming back here." And it's so funny because I look those people up on LinkedIn from time to time, and they're all still at Microsoft or Google or Amazon. Like giant megacorp. And they never left. So anyway, I quit and I wanted to do a startup, and I went to Florida, visit my parents, got really bored after 2 days. So my parents are boring. And I made this Facebook app. Facebook had just launched the Facebook platform. And my goal was to get 100 people to use it in a week that were my friends. And my goal was also to just like learn how to program because I was out of programming experience at that point in time. So I did it. I made it. A friend of mine from Georgia Tech was like, "Let me work with you." We launched it. We got 1 million people to use it in a week. And that was cool. But then we made every wrong decision possible because we didn't know what we were doing. So we hired people who were really bad. We used the wrong tech architecture. We didn't understand what was valuable. Like we didn't know what KPIs mattered and what was valuable. We didn't know how to generate revenue, and we didn't optimize for revenue. We didn't optimize for retaining customers. So after 10 months, we were like, we built this gobbledygook of like random shit, and it looks, and like people use it and it's generating some revenue. But we made a bunch of bad strategic choices here. Let's try to sell this. So we went to a conference and met this guy at the conference named Shervin Pishavar. And he was like, "You guys, I know what you guys are. You guys are Esgit. You made these, superlatives and Entourage and whatever other Facebook apps we made. I want to buy you guys." And so we went to lunch, and he hung out with us, super charismatic dude. And then he wrote a number on the back of a napkin and slid it across the table, $2 million. We looked at it and we said, "Okay, we'll sell to you for $2 million. So we ended up selling to him. He was doing a roll up of Facebook apps. So he'd gotten a term sheet from Greylock and Founders Fund to raise $15 million to go buy Facebook apps, smush them all together, and try to make something bigger and better. So yeah, that's how I made, a little bit more than $1 million at 26.
Yeah. I want to pinpoint one thing you said, which you kind of said, it's actually kind of funny. You said it so fast, which is like, we worked on this thing for a few weeks and we got like 1 million users. And it's interesting because earlier on we were talking about time, right? Like at a certain point, you need to just give something enough time.
Yeah.
I think the assumption, though, that makes is that you need to be in the right arena first. You can give something all the time in the world. If it's just the wrong thing, the wrong idea, you're not in the right arena, so it still won't work. Or it won't be optimal, at least.
Yeah.
So...
yeah, I have this friend who is working on a startup. He's been working on it for 7 years. And I don't think it's, and he's got nothing to show for it after 7 years, which was a really long time. Really great guy, really competent, really smart, and indomitable. Like, he will not give up. And the market that he's in, the business has gotten harder and harder to succeed in over time. And, I'm really I often, when I hang out with him, want to be like, I think you should stop doing this and just take a break and start something else. But he constantly believes that it's just one more unlock before this thing works. So that is a really dicey, situation of figuring out the right timing and right business opportunity and how much to persevere. There's a real art to it, and there's no science to it.
But even with, and you said it so quickly, like the getting 1 million users, I'm curious, I want to make it really actionable for people. And so I want to make it of like, how do I even know that I'm in the right arena? Like, how... even in that moment, how strategic was it where you were like, oh, okay, we see this is a big opportunity. We know this is going to kill. We'll put it out. And then it worked. Versus we were just working on this thing. I'm trying to pick coding back up. I'm working on this thing with my friend. We just put it out and it just happened. Like, one feels strategic. One almost just feels like it was like luck. And then we capitalized on our luck.
Yeah.
What's the true story?
I think that we were lucky, and there was a spark there, and then we basically fed that spark in the right way by being like, cool, there's a bunch of people using this app. How do we make it more viral? What feature should we add that will make it so that everyone who uses it kind of tricks or forces other people into using it? So we built a feature that did that. And that's kind of what worked for us there. I think the way I would answer your question is like, figure out what the go-to-market strategy is for your product or service. And there's this phrase that is first-time entrepreneurs care about product, first-time founders care about product, second-time founders care about distribution. So it's so funny because when I see startup decks, they'll spend 10 slides on the problem and the product, and they will spend 0 slides on how we're going to get customers because they don't know. They haven't thought about it. They've done no research. They've not run a Facebook ad. They've not talked to customers. They've not talked to other people in the industry to figure out what does it actually cost to acquire customers for this kind of thing. One of the actionable things that I would do and that I do when I'm thinking about a startup is talk about go-to-market strategy a ton. Think about go-to-market strategy a ton, even before I think about what the right product is. Because I'm like, if I have the right go-to-market strategy, I'm going to be able to talk to customers and find out how to iterate on the product to make the product the right product. But most companies will actually die from, I guess, two things. One is the problem they're solving is a vitamin and not a painkiller. And then two, they're solving a really great problem, but they have no idea how to get it to customers, and they haven't done enough thought or diligence on that.
What does that mean? A vitamin versus a painkiller? Like, what's the difference between the two? What's the distinction?
Yeah, it's if you go onto the Sequoia website, they actually explain this way better than I could, but I'll take a stab at it. A vitamin is something that you want and that you feel like is going to make your life better in the long run. A painkiller is, my back hurts and I will pay whatever amount of money it is to solve my back pain immediately. And so when your product is a painkiller, the moment you tell somebody that like their house is on fire, the moment you tell them, I have buckets of water that can put your house out of fire, put the fire out, people are like taking out their wallet. When it's a vitamin, they can't, and you're like, okay, if you use our service, this good thing's going to happen to you in 2 months. People don't want to believe you. It takes a lot of energy and effort to convince people to believe it. So that's the difference.
Yeah. I'm curious then, so like if and especially you're like a seasoned entrepreneur at this point, is that almost your mindset to starting companies, in the sense of like, you're looking for, what is that thing that there's like an urgency for it? Like when I tell people about it, because there's actually, there's a lot of things that you can tell someone about, and it's not bad. It's not like they're like, oh, I would never use this. They're like, oh yeah, that sounds like good, but they don't need it.
Right.
And so I'm curious for you, like when you're thinking about, what's even your framework for ideas that you move forward with and you put everything in and you go all in? Because it does seem like from your story that when you're in, you're all in. So what is are you only going all in on things that are, like you say, like there's an urgency behind it?
Yeah, I think it's number one, what's the distribution strategy? And is that real and going to work? And the distribution strategy isn't, we're going to do PR and get on TechCrunch and we're going to get customers that way. And the strategy isn't, we're going to get, Mr. Beast to mention it in a Mr. Beast video, but a very like real, repeatable, scalable distribution strategy. So that's number one. Number two is the problem that you're solving is an acute problem that ideally immediately unlocks revenue for people, or immediately solves an acute, dire pain that they have. And so it provides immediate gratification and value, and is a painkiller. That's number two. Number three is, can this be big? How big is the market for this thing? And will the growth strategy and the number of people who have that acute problem is the number of people that have that acute problem large enough to build a really giant business? And is the distribution strategy we have actually going to work to get the 10 millionth customer on board for this company?
No, that's a good framework. Okay, cool. Let's apply that to Tiny. So you sell your first business for 2 million, and then so that's done. How does Tiny come about? What's the story there?
So sold that company, moved to New York City, and was like, let me grind it out. I want to start a new thing. And a friend of mine from high school named Ian Spivey was working as a banker. He went to MIT, studied computer science, and he decided to quit his job because he was tired of being a banker and working in finance. And him and I just started hanging out. We'd go to coffee shops and hang out and talk about starting a business together. And so we were kind of like half in starting a business together, half out of starting a business together for like 6 months. So we really just kind of wasted 6 months not being sure if we wanted to work hard or not. And then we were like, okay, let's actually buckle down and try something. So we had this idea, which was Twitter for colleges. So we were like, Facebook is amazing because it's got the real social graph and it's people that you actually know. What if we built something that was more of a broadcast mechanism on college campuses? Would that work? And we started working on that idea for 6 months. And then after 6 months, we kind of just gave up on it. And we're like, Twitter for colleges is actually just Twitter, is what we decided. I actually still think there's a space there for something that's like a broadcast network on college campuses. But we gave up on that. Tried a bunch of other bad ideas. Like we were like, there was a company that was like a newsletter business that sold to Comcast for a couple $100 million. That was like, can't remember the name of it, but it was like a newsletter business for women talking about fashion. And we were like, let's start a newsletter business talking about green energy. And probably there's a opportunity to do that, and it could be a real small business. But after a couple of months of that, we were like, what are we doing? We don't know anything about green energy. We don't know anything about the newsletter business. Fuck this. And then a friend of mine from Microsoft had started a mobile ad network and was like, hey, Suli, we can take anything that you make and promote it into the top 5 of the iOS App Store. And when we do that, you're going to get hundreds of thousands of people to download whatever it is that you've made. So I was like, oh my God, distribution is solved. The number one problem is go-to-market distribution. You're solving that. Okay, whatever I do next, I got to work with you and get that distribution. So he was like, here's an idea, go make this mobile game and it'll work. We'll promote it at the top of the App Store. And that's exactly what we did. We made a mobile game and launched it with him. We're the number 1 top free app in the App Store. And we got something like 1 million downloads in 10 days. So we were like, great, this works. Yeah. And we had in-app purchases in the game. And so starting from the first day, we started generating revenue, and we worked on improving and optimizing that revenue inside the game. And in the first month, we generated $500,000 in revenue. Wow. So after beating our head against the wall for 18 months, trying a bunch of ideas, this immediately worked. And we were like, great, let's do this. Yeah. And we stopped working on everything else.
Yeah. You know what? I think I'm doing my own business 100% of the time now. And it's interesting because you were talking about effort earlier on, that some people, they just don't want to put in the effort. They don't want to put in the hard work. I think when it comes to starting a business, at least from my experience so far, which is limited, the effort is almost different. It's not effort in how maybe you would traditionally think about it. It's not like if you were working in the yard and you're like having to dig a ditch. When I think about effort, that's almost what I'm thinking. It's like this physical toil. For me, I think the difficulty of doing a business is, first of all, you wear like a bunch of different hats, especially early. You'll be the sales guy, you're the marketing guy, you're the operations guy, you're now like a recruitment, hiring manager, you're a tax guy. So you're constantly challenging yourself. I don't even think that's the biggest thing though. I think there's a mental toll to doing it, which is every day I am showing up and I am putting the work in.
Yes.
And nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And there's not, at least when this is the biggest difference I found from working a 9 to 5 to doing a business. At least when you're doing your 9 to 5, every 2 weeks you get paid.
Yep.
You could have had the shittest 2 weeks of work of your life.
Yeah.
It's like reward.
Yep.
Like your reward is built into the job. When you're an entrepreneur, you could be doing the best weeks of work of your life. You could be losing money.
Yeah.
It's almost like there's like almost like a time lag. Like before
before you're ever successful, before you see even the smidgen of success, you've been doing all of this work before. And the difficulty is in that period before the success, it's that 18 months that you were talking about, where it's like, I'm just going from business to business. And I'm sure every time you quit one, it must feel like a lost endeavor. It's like, I poured in 6 months. I have nothing to show for it. And the difficulty is having a mindset where it's like, okay, now I'm going to go into the next thing with the same vigor, with the same energy, with the same intensity, belief. After all of these failures, it's almost like the basketball player that goes 0 from 10.
Yes.
Then thinks they're going to hit the 11th shot.
Yes.
And so talk to me about that 18 months. Like where was your mind at? And then juxtapose that with like, you put this app out, you get the 1 million downloads, you make the $500,000. Yeah. What is the magic of that moment, of that attainment of like, finally something?
That 18 months was some of the worst time in my life, probably. Because we would in the beginning, we weren't really putting in the effort. So we would kind of meet for 2 hours a day in a loud coffee shop and then be like, I got nothing done. Did you get anything done? No? Okay, fuck it. Let's try again tomorrow. So we just weren't structuring our day and structuring our time and our environment to actually like be serious about it. So I think that was the big mistake that we made for 6 months. And, instead I wish I just was like, cool, I'm going to spend 3 months in Italy and then 3 months actually doing work for real. So that sucked. Then we were like, all right, we're going to take this seriously. And then we literally would come in and we didn't believe in what we were doing half the days. And so we would just keep doing it, putting one foot in front of the other. And it literally felt like I was beating my head against a brick wall that we had in our office. So I think that was really shitty. If I had to do it over again, I think I would be a lot more aggressive about like vetting, spending a day and being like, on this day, on Mondays, we think about new ideas. And we don't work on the other idea that we're already working on. We think about new ideas to try to come up with a better idea. The other 4 days, we're really grinding it out and focused on taking the plan we've already come up with and executing. But on that one day, we're trying to come up with better ideas. And that gives you the right balance of like heads down and looking and spending time looking around and trying to come up with something different. The other thing that I would do is we were pretty isolated. Like, we were in New York City at the time. There was not a very good tech community. I didn't know many entrepreneurs. I would go and try to spend a lot more. I would have probably moved to San Francisco. If I had to do it all over again, I'd move to San Francisco immediately. I'd go to every tech event that I could, like 4 nights a week, go out and try and meet entrepreneurs and tell people very openly, this is the idea I'm working on. Is this a good idea or a bad idea, and why? Ask everybody that question and see what you can learn from that experience. It's tough to do that because, a lot of people don't have any fucking clue whether your idea is a good idea or not, but they still have an opinion. So you gotta like be able to listen to a bunch of people talk and throw what they're saying out the window, which is super hard.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think it's almost...
it's funny. It's funny because actually now I'm not even sure that that's what I would do, because now when I have an idea that I really like and people are like, what are you working on? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you because you're going to tell me something that makes me question whether this idea is good or not. And I already know it's good. So I don't want feedback. I'm not even going to tell you what it is. I refuse.
And I always tell myself this, it only takes one. And I think with the way that even like the education system is set up, you're kind of taught that
Like the best students, they get A's in everything.
Yes.
You're kind of taught that if you fail 10 tests but get 100%,
You
it's
suck.
not.
You suck.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, in real life, it's the opposite. You just get one thing right across 100 things that you tried, and you win. You win the whole ball game. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so you put the app out. It's successful. It's a free app. Your in-app purchases are going off. Things are working. Where do we go from there?
So we improve that so that we can start generating more revenue from it. And then we are like, this worked. Let's do a second one. We make a second game. We launch it with the same mobile ad network. Same thing, top of the app store, 1 million new customers. Now we're doing something like 10, 12 million a year in revenue. So say 1 million in revenue a month. So we're like, fuck, this is amazing. And we're generating massive amounts of profit. Then some VC finds us and says, hey, love what you guys are doing. And actually at some point here, we moved from New York City to San Francisco because we were like, got to be in San Francisco to do a startup, which I still believe is true to this day. Whereas, a lot of people disagree with that, but if you're doing a startup, you should be in San Francisco and nowhere else. So anyway, we talk to this VC firm. They start asking us questions that like expand our mind and kind of blow our fucking minds. Actually, they're like, what is your LTV? And in the room, I'm like Googling, what does LTV stand for? And, learn, it stands for lifetime value. It means you get a customer, how much revenue you're going to generate from that customer in the entire lifetime that they're a customer. Then they were like, what's your CAC, your customer acquisition cost? And then I had to Google CAC. So I realized, oh, wow, these guys know all this stuff that I never thought of. And they asked the question, if we give you $5 million today, could you acquire customers and give us $10 million and generate $10 million in revenue? And we were like, gosh, we never even asked ourselves that question. So we thought, wow, these guys are smart. We should get them to help us. And they're trying to throw money at us. Let's take it. So they gave us a term sheet. I can't remember what it was, but I want to say like $4 million at a $20 million valuation or something like that. We then go and are like, cool, should we take this term sheet? Well, before we do that, let's try to find what the other VCs think. So we try to get intros to the other VCs, although it's really very slow. So then I start DMing people on LinkedIn that are VCs and say, hey, start a business. We're doing 10 million revenue, bootstrap, no outside funding, have a term sheet, want to talk to you. And so, when you say you have 10 million in revenue or bootstrapped and have a term sheet, every VC is like, cool, let's talk to these guys.
Yeah.
So we went up and down Sand Hill Road, pitched to a bunch of people, and ended up raising 18 million from Andreessen Horowitz, and 5 million of that went in our pockets, me and my co-founder, and then 13 million went into the business. And so then we were like, we're off to the races. Let's spend this money and make more games, hire more people, and we'll generate more revenue. Simple plan.
Just quickly, because I almost want to get like the checkpoints. So with your first company, the exit was 2 million. The thought at that moment was, okay, what's the next company? At this point, you raised the investment from Andreessen and Horowitz, 5 million into your pocket. What's the mindset then? Is it just, okay, now we're taking this thing to the moon, or is it starting to click in of like, okay, this is big shit?
Yeah, I think when we went and pitched Andreessen Horowitz and they were excited about it, we were like, okay, this could be something real.
Yeah.
And then when they were like, here's a term sheet, and we got it negotiated up to 18 million, And we signed the term sheet. The only thing I think I thought about for that 30-day period was, oh, we get $5 million. Who gives a shit what all the documents say? Let's just get that $5 million. We're already successful.
Yeah. So it was success at that point. It was like, it's all good now.
Yeah. So I think at that point we were like, let's get that 5 million. Got that 5 million. And then 13 million in our company bank account. And then the next day I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's keep working on this company and let's try to make a lot more. So it didn't really, it didn't like change anything for me, weirdly.
No fancy Lamborghini, new house.
No. I literally changed nothing about my lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I gave all that money to my dad because he was like buying real estate and was like, let me just invest in real estate. I said, sure.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So the 5 million's in the pocket, 13 million for the company. You then start going after some pretty big games and like licenses and all these things. Break that down. I think it's such a cool part of the story. Break all of that down.
So we start hiring people. We start making more games. It's working. Our revenue's growing. We're keeping the business at around break even. We're hiring brilliant people, like amazing artists, amazing data analysts, people with PhDs, people with MBAs from Kellogg, Harvard, MIT, and we're building all this cool infrastructure and all these cool dashboards. And every game is getting better than the last game. Like the art is getting better, the game mechanic is getting better, is generating more revenue per customer. And so everything is just like hunky-dory, looks fucking amazing. We get a company that comes to us and says, hey, love what you guys are doing. It's a company that's big in Japan. They're publicly traded in Japan, worth billions of dollars. They make mobile games in Japan. They're saturating the Japanese gaming market. And so they're like, let's go into the US and try to grow in the US. So they offer to buy the company. We turn it down because we're just have so much conviction and know like that what we're doing is the right thing. And then within 6 months, we run into this giant unbreakable brick wall, which is these two Japanese companies are spending so much money doing customer acquisition in the US that it used to cost us about 75 cents to acquire a customer, and we would generate $4 in revenue from that customer. Then it moves to $1.25. Then it moves to $2. Then it moves to $3. Then it moves to $6. Then it moves to $9. Then it moves to $12. So now it's costing us $12 to acquire a customer, and we generate $4 in revenue. So we can't spend money doing customer acquisition. So we stopped spending money doing customer acquisition, and the business quickly starts falling apart. Our revenue starts declining, and we're just like, what the fuck is going on? We've got 150 people, some giant office in San Francisco. Our monthly cost of operating is probably $2 million at this point, but we're generating, $2.2 million in net revenue. But then our revenue starts declining and we start losing money every month. So I'm like, okay, we're fucked. So we come up with this strategy. This guy I worked with, Andrew Green, might have come up with it, or maybe I came up with it. We came up with a strategy where we're like, let's license brands from media companies and make games using those brands. What that will do is solve our customer acquisition problem, solve our distribution problem. So much of entrepreneurship is just solve the distribution customer acquisition problem. So we're like, cool, let's try to license a big brand. When we launch the game, people who love that brand will hear about the game, show up and download it, and we'll get 40 million downloads just because we have this brand. So we decided to go after the Family Guy brand. I've never seen an episode of Family Guy. I think it's kind of stupid. I think the artwork is bad. I'm not like into it, but the demographic information is there. Like there's 20 million people that follow Family Guy on Facebook. There's 3.5 million people that watch it in real time every when the episodes air. So we're like, cool, let's go do this. We spend 6 months trying to license that brand. We get introduced to the people that make decisions. We work on a pitch. We make the pitch amazing. It's way better than every other pitch that they've received. But we're like literally a tiny company that they're like, should we work with these guys or should we work with EA or Zynga because they got a lot more money and are bigger? And we every day we would come to the office, me and Andrew Green, and be like, this week we got to do something special that sets us apart from the other guys. So every week we did something crazy. Like one day we went and took apart all these Zynga games and we said, here's why all these Zynga games are bad and why they're great at making Facebook apps. They're going to fail at making a mobile app. This is why EA is bad at making mobile games. We found out that there was this guy, Tom Rothman, that used to work at Fox, and he's buddies with Mark Andreessen. Mark intros us to Tom Rothman. We get on the phone with him. We tell him who we are. We say, hey, Tom, we want you to join our board of directors in exchange, and you'll get a bunch of equity for that. In exchange for that, we want you to call this guy at Fox and tell him that he should do the deal with us. And he's like, I love you guys. I'm going to do that right now. And that guy is actually, I've been his mentor for the last 7 years. He's my protege. Everything that he's achieved is my doing. I'm going to call him right now. So he calls that guy up and says, yo, you got to work with these TinyCo guys. They're amazing. And so then they come back to us and are like, okay, we're going to do the deal with you guys because we're afraid of who else is going to call us if we don't do the deal with you, and afraid of all the other crazy shit that you guys might do. So we were just like dogged, and they said, all right, let's do the deal with you guys. So we signed a contract where we had to pay them $10 million for the Family Guy license. That $10 million was due within 30 days of the signing. At the time, we've got about $1.5 or $2 million in our bank account. So we're, about 10 million light of paying them 10 million. So I signed that contract. And then the next day I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to get $10 million. So we get $10 million in venture debt. So we've got these games that are generating revenue. So we're able to get venture debt from Silicon Valley Bank, RIP, and from this venture debt firm called Pinnacle Ventures. They give us $10 million. We take that $10 million, give it to Fox. And then we start working on the game. Takes us about a year. The game is still not done. It's supposed to have launched. We run out of money, and everyone is mad. Our employees. So one of the things that happens. So we get that $10 million. We pay Fox. Then the day after that, we have about 160 people at the company at the time. We fire in one day 80 people. I call everybody into our big room and I say, hey guys, I have some really bad news. Today we're going to fire 80 people.
Brutal.
And before I do this, actually, I realize I'm going to have to do this and my entire body breaks out in hives. I go to the doctor and I'm like, what is going on here? She's like, take off your shirt. She gasps when I take off my shirt and there's just spots all over me. And she's like, are you under any stress? And I was like, yes, I am under incredible amounts of stress. So anyway, we fire these people, really shitty human experience. San Francisco is a super small town. So sometimes I would see somebody that I'd fired, and they'd be walking on the street, I'd be walking on the street, and they would see me, and then they would cross to the other side of the street so that they didn't have to walk by me. So, some of that stuff happens as a result of firing people. And it's one of those things where, those people did their jobs really well. We hired them because they were great at their jobs. I just made a bunch of bad business decisions that led to a place where we had to fire that team. So anyway, that happens. And then fast forward 12 months, we run out of money. Everyone's mad. Our employees the ones that didn't get fired are mad because they're like, should I still be here? Should I quit? And so every week, 1 or 2 people are quitting during this 12-month period. We get to the end of that 12-month period. We're supposed to launch the game. The game isn't done. We're out of money again. We've already stopped paying as many bills as humanly possible while keeping the lights on. So then I invested in this company called MoPub. It got acquired by Twitter. Turned $100,000 into $1 million. I took that $1 million and said, okay, I'm going to put it into the company, and that's going to get us across the finish line to launch the game. So that's what happens. We launch the game. We're expecting it to be this Apple app of the week in the App Store. That happens at noon the day we launch it. The Apple app of the week comes out. It's not our Family Guy game. It's some other game. I get so frustrated and so mad that I just say I'm going home, and I go home and watch Netflix and fall asleep and wake up the next morning just like depressed and sad that we didn't get the featuring that we want, and this strategy of like licensing games wasn't going to work.
In your mind at that point, it's over.
It's over. That $1
The
million,
gig is up.
yeah, like I'm gonna have to fire everybody. All our investors are gonna lose all their money. That $1 million I put in is gone. Fox is gonna be disappointed. Like just everything fucked. So, I'm not even looking at any of the numbers because I'm just so sad. But then I wake up the next morning and I'm like, cool, let's see how much revenue we did yesterday. And I look it up, and then we did 500,000 in revenue yesterday. So I was like, oh shit, this is actually working.
We're back, baby.
Yeah. And I run to the office and I'm like, guys, did you look at the numbers? And everyone has already looked at the numbers and was looking at it yesterday. So then we're like, all right, let's fucking maximize the revenue that we can generate from this game. And so we generate, $10 million in revenue in the first month. We pay back the venture debt in 60 days or something like that. In fact, the venture debt guys called me and were like, you're paying this down too fast. You're going to run out of money. And I was like, no, this game is going to work and we're going to generate a ton of revenue. We've got a tiger by the tail. I'm paying you off so I don't have to pay any more interest. So we paid them back $10 million within 2 months, and then I get my $1 million back within 4 months or something like that. And then the game goes on to do, I don't know, probably $350 million in revenue or something like that. Gets all the guys at Fox promoted because they get they get 40% of the net revenue or net profit that we get. Goes to them. So all those guys get promoted and they get bigger budgets to do more cool shit on the Fox side. So they love us. Yeah, business is a success.
One of the things we spoke about at the beginning, we spoke about your belief that you have this belief that you're going to get it done. Given a long enough time horizon, you're going to figure it out. You laid out for us the journey and some of those dark moments, when you had the hives, having to fire employees, having people cross the street, all of these things. And obviously that moment of we did all of this stuff, went to hell and back, we tried everything. And in that moment, you just didn't think it had worked. I'm curious, when was the belief challenged? Was there a moment where you were like, I guess I'm just not the guy then?
Yeah. There were a lot of moments where I was just like, this isn't working and I'm failing at this. And at some point, we would get we created a anonymous inbox where people could send feedback. And there was all this feedback about stuff I was doing incorrectly. And this guy, Andrew Green, that became my right-hand guy, he would give me feedback really kindly and with tons of empathy, being like, this is wrong and you're doing this badly. So lots of moments where I felt like a failure. And I would tell him, I can't even fix these problems because I'm just so busy trying to make the company work. I can't fix the shortcomings I have right now. So yeah, there was a ton of moments where it was like, this isn't working. And I disassociated my personal identity from the company. And I was like, actually, these are two separate things, not one thing. And I started thinking about, cool, what will I do next? But I would still show up to the office every day. You know, in Iron Man has like a heart, artificial heart. And I felt like the way that I retained people during that 12-month period, the way that we made the Family Guy game succeed and finished it, was I would show up and everybody was looking to see if my heart was still beating. And if I didn't act with the 100% conviction, I felt like other people would give up. So when I was in the office, I would show up with like all kinds of energy and all kinds of faith and conviction that what we were doing was going to work. And I think that kept the company together long enough for it to actually work. While at home, I might go home and have a lot of doubt about whether this game was going to work, whether we'd get the customers or not. So yeah, a lot of doubt along the way.
I always think when I hear those stories, I always think there's like a cost. There's a personal toll to that. Everything has to come out in some way, one or another. And so
yeah, I was dating this girl and she was like, I'm breaking up with you. I was like, wow, I'm such a great boyfriend. And she was like, no, you're married to your job. You never think about me. You're always really fucking stressed out. You're no fun to talk to. And she gave me that litany of things. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I'm a terrible boyfriend. You should leave.
So I'm just curious, what was it for you that was keeping you going? Because I know one thing for me, I think when I really get disillusioned, when it feels like things are going wrong in multiple directions. It's like the money stuff isn't working,
right.
The content's not working, the friend stuff's not working, the relationship stuff, my living situation. Like, what was keeping the spirits up in your own life?
I think it was really that I had all of these people that were looking to me for leadership, and like I was just like, I'm not going to let these people down. I'm going to show up and give this a shot. And I understand if this like doesn't work, and I bet the whole company on this Family Guy game and it fails. Okay, the company has failed. But I got to do my best to make this fully realize the opportunity and make sure that we're making the best of this one shot that we've got. That's all.
When you reflect now, I'm curious on this, and then we can go into the quickfire stuff. Do you think, when you reflect on your journey, do you think you needed that Family Guy game to succeed? Did that feel like a major moment where it's almost like, even if you think about like a plane, it's like going this way and at this point it goes up? Or do you think like you would have just rebuilt? I don't know. You would have taken it back.
My life would be completely different, actually, if that game did not succeed.
How so?
So we were a plane and we were like basically nosediving and we would have crashed and everyone on the plane would have died.
Yeah.
So that's what was going to happen in 30 days if the game didn't succeed. And instead, we were able to turn the entire business around and reach new heights in terms of revenue and profit. And, you know, we licensed the Harry Potter mobile game after that. We made the first ever Harry Potter mobile game, and we did that because of the success of the Family Guy game. So yeah, my life would have looked completely different, actually.
If you had to give advice to someone who's kind of going through a crisis, like things just seem like they're going wrong, because I always think, I call it like the making of the man. Like that's kind of when you see who someone is. It's like when everything's going wrong, can you stay poised? Can you stay calm? What would you tell them to just navigate that situation, to remain focused, to remain locked in, like just to keep going?
I think I would do it differently than I did then. I think then I just did brute force, wake up, go to the office, and get to work and focus on the thing. I think I would probably, and I had no real outlet. Like, you know, I never told anyone at the company what the problems were. and investors don't want to hear about your problems either. And then your friends also are like, I've heard enough about how much your business sucks. So I would probably find an outlet that's like a therapist that I'm like, cool, I get to dump my problems. And part of the magic of like dumping your problems and saying them out loud is you like realize that, okay, that does really suck. But now that I've said it out loud, I'm less embarrassed and less humiliated. I feel less shame around, less guilt around the reality. And you're able to realize that actually this is still fine. And you're able to move forward in thinking about what your life could look like past this point in time.
The perspective.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting? Actually, I remember one of my other guests said this. So basically, he works with this guy called, do you know Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yep.
Like the big marketing guy.
Yep.
He was basically his right hand. And I asked him, I said, what's the biggest thing that you learned from Gary? And I've been watching Gary's content for, must be like nearly 10 years now.
Yeah.
So since I was a teenager, so I'm like expecting, oh, he's going to say some good shit now. He's going to say some big stuff. And he's like, the biggest thing that I learned from Gary is that none of this matters. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
He's like,
Yeah.
literally, he's like, if Gary turns up to an event and everyone's there to see Gary and then he just doesn't want to be there anymore, he'll just be like, okay, I'm tired. Like, I want to leave.
Yeah. Wow.
He's like, things like these things that we think matter and we put so much onus and we put so much emphasis and effort and it's our whole world revolves around this thing, doesn't matter. The next day, no one's really going to care. And he was saying, like, if more people just had that belief and like understood that at a fundamental level, you would take more chances, you would take more risks, and you would also live life in just enjoying this moment.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, my world is falling and putting so much pressure. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves.
Yeah, I've heard that kind of advice. I've heard Naval say something like, everything that we're doing is sandcastles and they'll be gone before you know it. So, I find that like unempowering, disempowering, whatever that word is. I find that depressing and sad. And it makes me not want to get up in the morning and do anything if none of it matters. So, I fundamentally and intellectually realize that that's true, but I fight against that concept intellectually and emotionally because I feel like it leaves me with nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm not at a place in life where I can accept nothing.
Yeah. No, I like it. Okay, cool. Let's go quick fire. I'm gonna shoot some questions at you. You give me your first response, your gut response. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever got?
I think, I think there's a lot of platitudes now, what seems like cliche platitudes now that I really like. Probably the best is everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. Just gave me appreciation for the fact that like, I think at some point in my life, actually recently in like the last 5 years after selling businesses and making a bunch of money, I was like, life is hard. And there's all these things that happen that discourage me on a daily basis. And that quote and some others have made me think that like, really it's about moving forward while you're in pain and agony from all of these problems that you're having in your life. And success, everyone has these problems, and success is actually succeeding with the pain, not by hiding it or getting rid of it or spending time dealing with the pain, but just moving forward while in pain.
Overcoming. Yeah. What do you think what's the worst piece of advice you ever got?
Follow your passion, I think is super meaningless. Because I believe that passion comes from an action to bias and doing something. You become passionate in the act of doing. You don't become passionate by sitting still. And yeah, like you create your passions, you don't find them. They don't exist and you uncover them like you find them in a box. You create them from thin air. There is nothing there. You create a passion by trying it out and caring.
Yeah, yeah. See, we're in like college graduation season.
Right.
Like people are leaving like high school, or they're leaving college. They're getting out into the world. They're doing things.
What an epic time.
Yeah. What an epic time to be alive. And so I'm curious from your perspective. Obviously, you've built businesses. You've also invested in a whole bunch of companies. And I think one of the interesting things from my vantage point, I've just started to see how things like boom and bust. So I've seen, like a few years ago, all the rage was about crypto.
Right.
And then last year, or maybe a year, 18 months, it's like NFTs is everything I saw. Now it's AI. If you were gonna go back in life, you're graduating right now, and you had to think about a space, like an industry to be in and to put your time in, to build a business, like what would you choose?
I think AI is real. And in fact, even now, I think that what I should do is move back to San Francisco and start an AI incubator and get exposed to a bunch of AI businesses and build one or many AI businesses, because I think that tech is real and transformative in the same way that mobile and the internet have been. So I think that's one. The other is, I think medicine and biology and genetics are about to change. And there's this Cambrian explosion in like diagnostics that we have. There's going to be this merger of like technology and humans. Like that Elon Musk Neuralink just got FDA approved to literally plant a chip inside your brain. I would go, and I think genetics and CRISPR are like on the cusp in the next 10 years of doing things that are transformative, maybe not for human bodies initially, but for livestock and farming. I would go play in those arenas and have a long-term time horizon and build something epic and life-changing there.
Sweet. Okay, final two. So first one is, obviously you've invested in a bunch of businesses. A lot of them have been a success. Some have failed. What is the biggest miss? What is the company that you look at? I feel like every investor has this. There's a company that's not on the portfolio that they're like, damn, like I had an opportunity to be in there. Yeah. It went crazy, but I'm not in there and it's gone crazy. What is that company for you?
Yeah, this one's a little bit of a heartbreaking question for me. There's this guy that worked for me that was roommates with Fred, the co-founder of Coinbase. And Brian and Fred were raising their Series A. They had a term sheet from Benchmark and a term sheet from Andreessen Horowitz. And we'd raised money from Andreessen Horowitz. So they called me up and were like, just asking for advice on, should we go with the Andreessen term sheet? Should we go with the Benchmark one? And chatted with them for an hour, gave them all the thoughts that I had. And, in that moment, I was like, oh, maybe I should invest in this round and throw 10K into this investment, or 25K or 50K or 100K. And I was just like, I don't really believe in this crypto shit. Seems like a bunch of hype. What Coinbase is building is just like PayPal for crypto. I don't think that's going to be real. So I didn't even ask them to invest. And if I'd invested $10,000, it would have turned into $180 million at their IPO. I think that Series A investment by Andreessen into Coinbase is their best ever investment across the hundreds of investments that they've made across 15 years that they've been investing. That one, I don't remember what the size of their check was, but 6 million, 8 million, 10 million turned into more than $10 billion at IPO.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, let's end on a happier note.
I think heartbreaking is too strong a word. Like, this is the nature of, startups where you just got to stay in the game, and eventually you'll hit one of these investments, or as an entrepreneur, like, just hit home runs or grand slams.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like I said, I feel like every investor that I speak to and also have just heard from, they all have that company, which is like just the nature of the game.
Yep.
Okay. Final.
I have a second one actually, which is I bought, I think $2 million of Airbnb stock, or maybe $1.5 million of Airbnb stock. And I sold it for, I don't remember the numbers, but like say 6 million. And if I'd held it to IPO, it would have been worth like 24 million. So I lost a 4x more return by selling too early.
Yeah. I feel like it balances out there. There's surely companies that you got out at the right time, or you didn't go in, that turn out to be busts.
For sure.
Okay. The final one, obviously you've invested in a ton of business. You've been around a bunch of entrepreneurs, and it doesn't even have to be an entrepreneur per se. Who is someone that you've met, and you don't even have to give their name, maybe you can describe it, that you were just incredibly impressed by? And what was it about them that was so impressive?
So here's somebody who I was like unimpressed with that I later was like super impressed with, which is, I was at some Andreessen Horowitz CEO dinner. Ben Horowitz is there. A bunch of the portfolio CEOs are there, including this guy, Ben Silverman, who's the Pinterest founder and CEO. And Ben Horowitz says, when you're hiring people, you got to hire people who are missionaries that believe in what you're doing. Never hire mercenaries. And everyone goes around the room and says, yeah, you're right, Ben Horowitz. Yeah, you're right, Ben Horowitz. Ben Horowitz, fucking genius. That's right. Except then it gets to Ben Silverman. He's a really quiet guy. And he says, I disagree with that. I hire mercenaries all the time. We have to be able to actually hire people and build stuff. We have to hire a bunch of mercenaries. And not everyone can believe in the like ultimate mission. And then everyone went back around and said, oh yeah, I agree with Ben Silverman. So just the ability to like think independently and like disagree with people in the moment and in the room that have a ton of authority and respect, without like bluster and ego. I really respected Ben Silverman for doing that.
Amazing. Suleiman, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So much fun.
I know, it's been a good one. And we went all over the place. We covered everything.
I feel like we got even tons more stuff to talk about. I want to ask you so many questions about your business and how it's all going and what the plan is for the next year and all that stuff.
You'll have to be a repeat guest.
Okay, great. Let's do it anytime you want.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel. We're having fire conversations every week on the podcast. Before we end the episode, a quick word from our sponsor, Free Agency. What if I told you there is a good chance you're leaving money on the table in your career? It would kind of annoy you a bit, right? Well, Free Agency aims to stop that. They represent and manage talent in the tech industry. Here's how they do it. First, they provide you with a dedicated talent agent. Think about this as your career quarterback. They understand you and your career goals. Based on that understanding, they bring you suitable interviews at top firms. You focus on smashing the interview, and together with their network, research, negotiation expertise, they will make sure you get a top of market salary. Stop job searching alone and start building your dream career today with Free Agency.